service to the nation.
The old weapons inspection process was a little more than a game.
They concealed, denied, deceived.
Return of inspectors would provide no assurance whatsoever.
To eliminate by inspection is, quite frankly, a fool's errand.
On the contrary, there's a great danger that it would provide false comfort that Saddam was somehow back in his box.
Reality is that between the original UNSCOM inspections and the UhMerican inspections, you destroyed, with those inspections, 90 to probably 95% of the Iraqi arsenal. The first Gulf War destroyed almost nothing. Post-war U.S. battle damage assessments confirm that.
The weapons inspectors were effective. They forced Saddam to get rid of this stuff. They had that country under control.
By 1998 at the latest, those inspectors had discovered most of the weapons of mass destruction, and the Iraqi programs at that point were essentially at an end.
Before the war in Iraq, the United Nations inspectors told us that Saddam Hussein did not have nuclear weapons capability.
Ironically, the major effect of the invasion of Iraq in terms of weapons of mass destruction has been to show that the inspectors were right all along.
The inspection regime worked. It was the most intrusive inspection regime in history, and it worked. And at the end of the day, that's another reason why we went to war for nothing.
These maniacs who are encouraging our enemies, weakening our troops' resolve, and confusing the American people.
Well, you shouldn't listen to these protests because they're obviously helping Saddam Hussein. Who would have guessed that you could build a massive international peace movement on the protection of Saddam Hussein?
The media is culpable for the misleading of the American public. They bought into the Bush administration's rhetoric.
They don't understand that there is moral violence and immoral violence. We used moral violence. God bless this president. He is truly a great man.
Reducing troop morale, confusing the American people, and emboldening our enemies. They are absolutely committing sedition or treason as far as I'm concerned. There's a huge difference between a personal opinion and an opinion which degrades and debases our military at a time of war. It's a disgrace.
I don't believe that mainstream media acted responsibly in regards to Iraq. I was belittled. I was called a traitor. I was called crazy. Paul Azan of CNN accused me of drinking Saddam Hussein's Kool-Aid for making accurate statements in response to aluminum tubes.
People out there accusing you of drinking Saddam Hussein's Kool-Aid.
If I'm an ideologue, then I'm a Republican ideologue. I'm actually a fairly conservative person who voted for George W. Bush. But I don't allow my ideology to get in the way of the facts and the reality of my duties and responsibilities as an American citizen.
It's a tendency, if you want to kill the message, to go after the messenger. If you can discredit the messenger, then you discredit the message. Or if you can make the story about the messenger, then people forget about the message.
And I think it's so unfair to try to silence debate and criticism by attacking those who say something with which you disagree.
The media is supposed to be the fourth estate, but they decided to completely climb in bed with the administration on this.
In a way, the administration constructed a box and that box had all the information that the administration wanted the media and the public and Congress to have.
What they would do is you'd have the Iraqi National Congress taking bogus defectors, the information from them, giving them to the Pentagon, and then the Iraqi National Congress then giving them to the journalists. And they said, if you don't believe us, the Iraqi National Congress, call up the Pentagon. So you had this circular reporting. And you've had the New York Times admitting that it was using one source for all of its information on weapons of mass destruction. And it was, self-affirming by going to the Pentagon, which put this stuff on paper.
It was a lot of exaggerations, partial information, sometimes the whole information, but on balance, a very one-sided view of Iraq's WMD program.
And a lot of these stories the journalists didn't want to look into because the editors told them to run with. We're going to be supportive of the administration. It's the patriotic thing to do.
I think that there was, on the part of the media, too much of in a sense, getting into the upcoming war and not enough look at, do we really need to go?
There were some journalists out there raising the alarm bells, the Seymour Hirsches, the Walter Pincuses of the world. But unfortunately, those great investigative reporters, they're usually exiled when the heat is on, and it's only after the fact that they end up being praised and given the pats on the back.
The excitement was to make the case to go to war, to show that, and that was the controversy that the media loved, is, it was the titillation of a WMD hitting us, not the titillation of, or the conflict of attacking the administration.
Both the Washington Post and the New York Times had very conservative editors that supported the White House on this.
I didn't foresee all of this. I'd like to say, I was very prescient. I knew what the others in the intelligence community were saying. I didn't. And I'm one of the ones who also, I drank the Kool-Aid. But early on, I felt that there were some real dangers going into the war. And I tried to get an op-ed into various major newspapers, and the word kept coming back. Nobody wants to hear this because we're going to war.
The United States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder.
His regime has an active program to acquire and develop nuclear weapons, and let there be no doubt about it.
We know for a fact that there are weapons there. There were a group of people who, for many years, had advocated going after Saddam Hussein, and they pushed this hard. And of course, raw intelligence data can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, as I'm sure experts have talked to you about. And so there were a group of people, I think, that were adamant that this was the right course to pursue.
We found the weapons of mass destruction. We found biological laboratories.
Everybody knows that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction.
I have every reason to believe that the intelligence that we were operating off was correct.
No question we have said that Saddam Hussein possesses biological and chemical weapons.
We know where they are. They're in the area around Tikrit and Baghdad and east, west, south, and north somewhat.
All this will be made clear in the course of the operation for whatever duration it takes.
Are you confident that you'll also find weapons of mass destruction?
I believe we will find evidence of the programs of chemical and biological weapons, yes.
How about the actual weapons?
Well, I just don't know. Let's wait and see what the team that's over there...
Actions continue with our new exploitation teams that have been brought in.
And that we will in fact find weapons or evidence of weapons programs that are conclusive.
It is somewhat puzzling, I think, that you can have 100% certainty about the weapons of mass destruction's existence and zero certainty about where they are.
Do you agree, and does it matter whether or not you find those weapons?
We might ask the Prime Minister that. We won't be proven wrong.
This is a process that takes some time, and it will ebb and flow.
One thing we know is that he had a weapons program.
I don't know anybody that I can think of who has contended that the Iraqis had nuclear weapons.
We believe he has, in fact, reconstituted nuclear weapons.
But on the specific issue of weapons of mass destruction, it's going to take time, and we're going to have to be patient.
Over time, the truth will come out.
Now, it's going to take time to find anything because
People will find that we presented a solid case, a case that is there and was there and will remain there.
So it's going to take a period of time to find the people. I don't think we'll discover anything myself.
Still thought that 3.5 months for new inspections was a rather short time before calling it a day, and especially when we now see that they say, the U.S. government is saying that, look, you have to have a bit of patience, these things take time.
I believe that we will find the truth, and the truth is he was developing a program for weapons of mass destruction.
I think what will happen is we'll discover people who will tell us where to go find it.
You're not going to find it simply in a house-to-house search. You're going to find it when people start to talk to you.
It is not like a treasure hunt where you just run around looking everywhere hoping you find something. I just don't think that's going to happen. The inspectors didn't find anything, and I doubt that we will.
Are people going to find out the truth? And the truth will say that this intelligence is good intelligence, no doubt in my mind.
What we will do is find the people who will tell us. There are a lot of people who lie and get away with it, and that's just a fact.
He has not developed any significant capability with respect to weapons of mass destruction. He is unable to project conventional power against his neighbors.
We are able to keep arms from him. His military forces have not been rebuilt.
Is U.S. credibility on the line over weapons of mass destruction in Iraq?
I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Depends on the assumptions. It depends on how long the war lasts. It depends on whether weapons of mass destruction are used.
What we have done is we have taken estimates looking at different variables and said, if this were the case on this variable and then on this variable, but there's so many variables that the numbers of possible point answers create a range that simply isn't useful.
I'm just not going to get into any speculation about numbers.
We're dealing with a country that can really finance its own reconstruction, and relatively soon.
So the money's going to come from Iraqi oil revenue, as everyone has said. They think it's going to be something like $2 billion this year. They think it might be something like 15, 12 next year. They think it might be something like 18 to 20 plus the next 19 the next year.
I will soon submit to Congress a request for $87 billion.
Why did the administration so dramatically underestimate the cost of this war?
We did not have perfect foresight into what we were going to find in Iraq.
With the cost of the war rising and the search for weapons of mass destruction going nowhere, the administration turns to David Kay.
This work is being carried out under the direction of Dr. David Kay, a respected scientist and former UN inspector who is leading the weapons search in Iraq.
We are determined to take this apart. We have a tremendous group of dedicated